I've always been associated and lived on the water in Manatee and Sarasota counties, and I've always been active in boating in one type or another and active on the water. My name is Allan Horton. I'm 72. I was born in Manatee County in Palma, Sola. I'm third generation native of Manatee County. My ancestors moved here. My grandfather moved here in Manatee County in 1881, and my grandmother moved there in 1851. At the time of her stepfather's death, she owned all the bayfront from the Ringling College of Art to the Crosley Estate, or the Sarasota Bradenton Airport, and west of the trail, and she lost all of that for taxes. My mother moved to Bradenton with her family in 1911. She used her inheritance from her father to purchase a big portion of Snead Island west of Palmetto, which we owned until 1981. My mother operated it as a tropical fruit and flower farm, and they raised avocados, mangoes, citrus, summer squash, cucumbers, bell peppers, and gladiolas. My father was a civil engineer, the first graduate from Manatee County of Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He was the designer engineer who designed the Tampa Bay seawall, which was a project that was recorded in engineering textbooks, even internationally, and renowned for its various design features. He was the engineer of record for the design of the initial skyway, and when my dad made his winning bid for the design of the skyway, he had Parsons Brinkerhoff engineering firm from Jacksonville as his consultants. The state, in the meantime, had decided it could not afford the $10 million bond that was required to build the bridge. When Fuller Warren went out of office, his successor was elected, and the new governor made that part of his platform that the bridge would be built, because there was tremendous political pressure from Pinellas County for a direct connection across the bay. When the design was rebid, Parsons Brinkerhoff became the engineering firm of record for the design of the new bridge, with my father in the reverse role as consultant. They took my father's design, amended it so that the alignment landed on property that was owned by a Florida state senator. And of course he sold it for the right-of-way at tremendous profit. That's where the politics came into play. And that's how the Skyway ended up where it is today. Now, the initial Skyway was of course one single span. The Summit Venture knocked down the original span under the guidance of harbor pilot John Lero, who got caught in a storm, and they collided with the Skyway. They would never have collided had the state not failed to replace what had been provided in the original design and constructed, which were wood fenders that stood out in front of the Skyway and bracketed the channel so that if a freighter went out of control, it would hit the fenders, it would not hit the bridge. And when they rotted away, the state never replaced them. They pulled them out of the bottom and didn't replace them. And anyhow, that's all been lost. I actually worked on the survey of Tampa Bay for the Sunshine Skyway. And at that time, there was no intercoastal waterway south of Sarasota Bay. And there was so little development on the coast, and the waterways here then were much, much different than they are today. Much less traffic. Sarasota Bay was so clean, the water was so clear, that we routinely caught grouper and Goliath grouper, what we used to call Jewfish, in the bay. My mother in particular liked to have grouper for Sunday dinner sometimes. And it was almost like going to the market. She'd say, well, I'd like to have a grouper for Sunday, and we would go out and get one. It was that easy. And of course the fishing was much different then, and set nets were still in use by the commercial fishermen off the beaches and in the bays. They caught enormous quantities of mullet and that sort of thing. I took a job with the Sarasota Herald Tribune in 1973 and was active in writing the editorial position opposing the use of entanglement nets, which was very controversial and made me largely despised by a lot of the people I grew up with. But the commercial fishermen refused to relent. I mean, they followed the mullet until they just about annihilated them. And of course, they caught other fish in the gill nets: sheephead and snapper and snook and redfish. And it was only within 2 or 3 years of the ban on entanglement nets all the fish started coming back. And it's a shame because many lives and occupations were ruined at that time. And it's always been my contention that if they would accept a recruitment study where they would withhold from netting the mullet for 1 year and see how the resource rebounded, and then resume commercial netting of mullet with preference given to commercial fishermen who earn at least 51% of their income from fishing, I still believe, that we could still have commercial netting of mullet and have a viable fishery also. But of course that didn't happen. I've always had boats. I had my first boat. It was a hurricane of 1944. A boat washed up on our beach on the Manatee River, and I asked my father if I could keep it. He said, well, we have to advertise it because it's not our boat. He ran an ad in the local newspaper for 2 weeks that this boat had washed up on our beach. And those were the longest 2 weeks of my life. And when the 2 weeks elapsed, he said, okay, you can have the boat. And we turned it upside down on logs on the beach and replanked it and recaulked it and repainted it and launched it, and that was my first boat. I built 2 boats, a pram, which I traded for my first car, sailing pram. After I was married, I built a 16-foot cedar strip plank canoe. I have volunteered for years in the Marine Maritime History Program at Historic Spanish Point in Osprey, where I'm in charge of building wooden boats of the pioneer period and sailing them and interpreting them to members of the public who tour the museum. And I should give credit to the late Stan Lowe, who was our master craftsman who directed that effort. And somebody's son said, a boat is just a bunch of small parts, and you have to design them properly and put it together right, and you get a boat. It's a long, slow process, but that's how it's done. That's generally a concise water-related biography.